to welcome everybody to Pro Mindset Podcast today. This is your host, Craig Doman. And I have a young man who is a guest by way of the fellow Kansas Jayhawk. His name is Mark Mears. Mark, I want to welcome you to Pro Mindset today.
Hey, thanks, Craig. And I think that's the first time I've been called young in quite a while, but I appreciate the flattery. Flattery will get you everywhere.
Hey, man, we're the same age, so you're young because I'm young. Okay. So you're not, you're an author, you're a speaker, you're a consultant, you're a visionary business leader, and you have a track record that's crisscross paths with my wife, Teddy, in the corporate world, where you worked for Leo Burnett, a major agency in Chicago.
Yeah.
You worked on accounts like McDonald's, Pepsi, Frito-Lay. And then understanding as you were a C-suite guy with Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah, I was a chief marketing officer of the Cheesecake Factory and president of Mimi's Cafe and CMO for Noodles and Company and other entities, and building off that experience to now having my own consultancy called Leaf Growth Ventures, where I inspire individuals, teams, and organizations to find purpose in fulfilling their true growth potential. And in doing so, pay it backward to help make a positive, lasting difference in the world. And so that's kind of what drives me now, is leading the Purposeful Growth Revolution to do that aspirational goal. And I created a purpose statement a few years ago, and it basically says, I don't want to just make money and retire. I want to make a difference and inspire. And that means making a difference in the lives of others and inspiring them to want to do likewise, which creates this kind of virtuous cycle of reciprocity, or what I call paying it backward. And you may be saying, well, pay it backward, isn't it pay it forward? I say no, because when I go to Starbucks and I go to the drive-thru, I will pay for the car behind me. I cannot pay for the car in front of me because they're already gone. So I'm literally paying it backward. And when I get up to the window, I simply tell the Starbucks team member, just tell them, God bless you, your debt has been paid. And I got to believe in that moment that they feel blessed to not only have a cup of coffee or two or whatever they ordered, but know that somebody they don't know was thinking about them and giving them literally a blessing. And there is something, Craig, called the law of reciprocity, which says when somebody does something nice for you, you feel a deep-seated urge to do something nice for someone else, and oftentimes in greater measure. So in that simple gesture of paying it backward, I'm literally paying it backward, because what I understand is oftentimes it creates a chain reaction of cars pay for the car behind them and so on and so forth. So that's really this bigger, broader thesis of why I wrote the book, because I've been blessed to have a wealth of experiences in my career. From, as you mentioned, the agency side, the brand side. I even ran a promotional marketing agency for a while, so I've really kind of seen it from a lot of different ends. And now putting it all together in this book, The Purposeful Growth Revolution, 4 ways to grow from leader to legacy builder. Everybody wants to talk about how to be a better leader, right? And we all do. Well, how do I know that? If you Google the word leader or leadership, you'll get about, I think, 14 billion with the B hits. And of course, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry with webinars, conferences, blogs, casts, books, newsletters, where people want to learn how to be better leaders. And it's great. We all should want to be a better leader. But I'm taking it a step further to say, what if you could be a legacy builder? And not the kind of legacy that is about bequeathing something of value after you're dead and buried, but a living legacy builder and how you use the time you have. And I don't know about you, Craig, but it doesn't matter what your, political persuasion is, sexual orientation, religious affiliation, even time zone. We all have 24 hours in a given day. One of us has 1 minute more or 1 minute less. And so how we pay it backward in giving of our time, our talents, our treasures, or our triumphs and travails, our life experiences to help others along their growth journey is really, probably, as you can tell, what fires me up these days.
Mark, I want to thank you for being on, and also want to recognize that I can feel that your heart is one of service. You're one of giving back. You're wanting to share the wisdom that you've gained through your experiences, through your book, through your messages. I want to first, before we talk about your book, I want to talk about you. How was it being the CEO or president Mimi's Cafe, a major brand, or being, chief marketing officer at Cheesecake Factory. What is that like? What are the pressures that you see on a day-to-day basis that people may not realize? How did you, and I'm going to ask you like 3 or 4 questions and let you take it where you want. How did you work on your identity as a man, as a professional, so that you could handle no matter what came your way?
Yeah. Most of us have a sports background. Yours probably deeper than mine. But it comes down to mindset and preparation. If you have the right mindset where, you're no obstacle is too big, you have the self-confidence in your abilities, and you want to grow, and you're humble enough to want to learn how to grow. And then preparation is taking that mindset and putting it into action. I remember growing up in Wichita, Kansas, getting ready for the football season. And I was a lifeguard in the summer to make some money. And on breaks, I would be in the pump room lifting weights, or I would go out and run around the perimeter. And at night, around 10 or 10:30, because it gets pretty hot in the summers there, and it's pretty humid, believe it or not, I would go for a run around this 4-mile kind of path near our house. And I would do that because I wanted to prepare myself for not only the August two-a-days, but the football season, so that when others are out partying or maybe asleep, I had a mental edge that I was doing something I knew nobody else was doing. And that got me prepared for the rigors of the season. So now connect that to the business world. I took that same mindset towards those, C-level leadership experiences. And the first word that comes to mind is duty. I'm in a high-level position where a lot of people reported to me. I never said anyone worked for me. I say they work with me, because I'm a big believer in carrying over my sports team experience into the work world. And I hate the word employees or workers or staffers. I call them team members, because there's a big difference in how you treat people and build relationships with people that you're counting on just as much as they're counting on me to lead. And so being in that position, responsibility, duty, the bigger word would be accountability, that I really took to heart, because I was like, I'm not going to let us lose, but I can't do it by myself. So how do I build the relationships with the team members to get the very best out of them, much like a coach would do for players on a team?
I think corporate America is very similar to a football team from the standpoint that C-suite people have to be like coaches. Sometimes they're not the people doing the work. They're not on the field. They're not interfacing with the clients or the customers as often as the C-suite people are. They're an extension of the C-suite, just like the players are an extension of the coaches.
Exactly.
Walk me through, you pick it, interview that you had for a huge job. So you were leaving one company, some search firm was coming after you and saying, hey, you have this opportunity to interview with, the Cheesecake Factory as a, chief marketing officer. And then you might have an opportunity, I don't know, the timeframes of different things. You're interviewing for the presidency of a pretty high, well-known brand, Mimi's Cafe.
Yeah, $500 million in revenue and 150 restaurants in 24 states, owned by, a publicly traded firm at the time, which is part of my story, but go ahead.
How did you prepare and how did you show up in those interviews? What was your message that you believe, or what was your identity, or what was your experience that made you different than the other candidates that you believe they picked you?
Yeah, well, I think in all cases, it's the same thing. The mindset is, this is my job. And even when I would send them emails responding to a question or whatever, I would put in the subject line, new chief marketing officer or new president, Mark Mears. In a subtle kind of subliminal way of planting the seed that this has already happened, right? Some people call it manifesting. I'm not sure I believe in all that, but it seems to be working for Travis Kelce. Speaking it into existence, I do think there is something to that. Preparing for the interview, like you would put together a game plan for a football game. You got to know the opponent, their strengths, their weaknesses, where you can exploit. Well, in this case, it's not necessarily about that. It's more about what opportunities might they be missing, or what problems can I uniquely solve that's going to help them grow. And so I consider myself a growth junkie. Craig, I love Starbucks coffee, but I'm also love growth in all of its forms. And so being able to demonstrate to them that I can help them grow. Who doesn't want to grow? We all do. And then not just having the vision, but demonstrating that I know how to execute. I know how to work with the team, whether it's my peers in the C-suite and being empathetic to say, I know how to work with the CFO because I know what they care about. I know how to work with the CIO because I know what they care about, and the Chief Human Resource Officer or whoever, right? And so I've always believed that when I came up through the marketing ranks, it's about building brands. It's about growing brands. But most people think there's only one brand, right? Like it's McDonald's. It's what we see externally as a guest or customer, right? But I believe there are 4 brands. You're like, what? Well, there's the personal brand, which is starting to get more in vogue. We all have one. We've always had one. But now we're better understanding who we are and how we fit, right? What makes us unique and different. And how do we explain that to show that we're the right piece of this puzzle for them to put in this leadership position. There's the internal brand, which is the collective we. So if the personal brand says, who am I? Then the collective we ask the question, what do we stand for? And then the external brand, which most people think of, is what value is exchanged? Because all marketing, all sales is a value exchange. What do I get for what do I pay? But most important, how do I feel about it? And then now, more important than ever, given the labor issues we're having, is the employer brand. And that asks the question, do I belong here? So I would always come at the interview from this kind of visionary approach to putting those pieces together and show how I can help bring people together to make this happen. Not that I'm going to come down with tablets from on high, but I'm going to help guide people through a process to where we get there together. And so those themes of vision, execution, teamwork, collaboration, and empathy, I think they're pretty darn important for any year.
Okay. I am a regurgitator. Okay. Most prophetic thing you said, in my mind, is that you help companies identify their problems and solution to their problems so that they could uniquely grow because of your perspective and your experience.
Yes.
Second thing you said was, I see it as an algebraic equation. Vision plus execution plus relationships / teamwork plus understanding there's four fields going on at once. There's 4 arenas here. Okay. And they're different, but they're all integrated. How does that look like? What does that look like? Just take Mimi's, just for example. Can you recall what was their problem that you were able to uniquely solve?
Great example. Those of you who don't know, Mimi's is still a casual dining restaurant with breakfast, brunch, lunch, and full bar. Okay. And so get real busy on the weekends because it was mainly known as breakfast and lunch. So we looked at the name Mimi's, and the problem we had was that A, we were too weekend centric and too breakfast centric. B, we were kind of a little old in the tooth. The clientele, our guests, were on the older side. It would be a place maybe your mom would go after bridge with her girlfriend or to catch up. And so we wanted to be more contemporary. We wanted to be more food focused. We wanted to be more experiential. And oh, by the way, the name Mimi has a great backstory that we weren't taking advantage of. Mimi was a French mademoiselle that the creator and owner of Mimi's met while he was stationed in France during the end of World War II. And so he had fond memories of this gal who he met. And years later, when he created the restaurant concept, he named it after her. And so we did research and we kind of came up with this whole idea of a new brand positioning, which was neighborhood bistro, inspired by France. So not Frenchy, not frog legs, not escargot or anything over the top, but we live in a Food Network society where people are much more adventurous with the kind of flavor profiles and recipes they'll experiment with and foods they'll try, more so than ever before when I was a kid. Okay. But they want a safe adventure. So instead of, French toast, it was cinnamon brioche French toast. Well, that became one of our highest selling breakfast items. And the food cost on that's pretty good. So we were making money from a revenue perspective and dropping more to the bottom line. We created a dinner menu that had dinner plates, like, cocoa wand was about as out there as we would get. All that really is chicken with red wine sauce and some vegetables, right? But people thought they were eating fancy. We created wine flights, so you could get 3 whites, 3 reds. No, by the way, part of the listening process is literally my first week on the job in our company headquarters in Columbus, Ohio. And before I had to catch my plane back to Southern California, we went by a restaurant and the manager said, "Hey, do you have a few minutes?" I'm like, I'm kind of ready to go and catch my flight. But yeah, sure. He brought his bartender out who was all smiles because he had come up with something called sparkling wine flight. He said, "Look, we can use the same, carrying vehicle that we use for our wine glasses, but our top selling beverage on the weekends was mimosas." But he created 3 different flavors. And I said at the moment, I called our head of operations and said, "We're about to roll out this whole wine flights program. Can we kind of stop the presses and see if we can add the sparkling wine?" And because I did that, and he said yes, demonstrating collaboration and teamwork, even though we were about to go to press with all the training materials for this new menu that we were about to roll out, the sparkling wine flights became 60% of all of our wine flight sales. Had I not listened and taken the time and recognized the big idea and then moved on it, taking action, we never probably would have done it. And, we would have lost a ton of revenue. We then put a concept, kind of a kiosk inside the big waiting area, which we needed for weekends, but not during the week. And we served French baked patisserie and boulangerie items, so croissants, macarons, breads, boules, etc., and French coffee. So all of a sudden now we took the asset, and even though we were open for breakfast, brunch, lunch, dinner, etc., we were filling it in every one of those day parts. So if someone wanted to come in and just get a croissant or a cup of coffee and go, like Starbucks, they could. Or we had a little patio area that they could come and sit and hang out on their laptop or meet a friend. Or if they wanted a full-on dining experience, they could go to one of our dining rooms. So we tested that, which is one of the reasons I was brought in from the Cheesecake Factory to create growth for the Mimi's brand. And not only from just day-to-day traffic and sales, but make the concept bigger and broader so that they could put their publicly given, capital behind it. And we did. In 2 years, we turned the brand around from double-digit negative sales. We put a new concept in the ground and a new brand positioning that tied it all together, a neighborhood bistro inspired by France. And it worked out really well until they decided to sell us instead of put the capital behind us, which is actually the start of the epiphany of the book, which is an interesting story.
Let's go back to, that's wonderful. I loved hearing that. You allowed your people to share their ideas, which is so critical because some people think when you're the CEO or you're the head coach or you're the boss, you're supposed to know everything. Oh, you just got to get the best ideas from everybody, implement the ideas that are going to work the best. What was, without breaching any confidentiality, don't have to name names, what was the most difficult event or situation you had to show leadership? You had to be sound-minded. You had to show some equity, meaning fairness. you had to make a tough decision as the boss. The buck has to stop somewhere. Head coaches do this all the time, and the NFL GMs do this all the time. They had to cut 37 guys, 10 days ago. That's not fun. I know you had some of those days. What was the hardest decision you ever had to make? What was your criteria for making the decision that you made?
I'm thinking of a couple different things. The one I'll lead with, I was told the board has decided to move in a different direction. So we recruited you to do, your team have done it faster than we thought you could. Want to shoot while the ducks are flying. And don't worry, I'm going to lead the sales process. We're going to give you a stay-on bonus. We're going to give you a sale bonus if it happens. If the sale doesn't happen, nothing's changed because we're doing it behind the scenes.
They instructed you to make your position obsolete.
Well, in a way, if the new company didn't retain me, which happened, and I didn't know it at the time, I learned a very valuable lesson in corporate America, or my whole team, and I'll get there. I couldn't tell anybody. I had to sign a confidentiality release that said, you can't tell anybody about this because it's a private sale. Okay, but you're going to lead the process. So now imagine that if you've been to, LA, you know how big and expansive it is. We lived out in Valencia, which is northeast of downtown, out in the Santa Clarita Valley. Mimi's headquarters was in Orange County, in Irvine, literally right across the street from John Wayne Airport. Well, that's about 2.5 hours drive every way. So I would stay in a hotel. There's a Hilton right across the street from John Wayne, and I would stay there Sunday night after dinner, put the kids to bed, work long day Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then Thursday night, somewhere after rush hour somewhat abated, but before construction started, I would then drive back home and be home for my family on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's when I wasn't traveling to our headquarters in Columbus, Ohio for board meetings, pre-board meetings, earnings calls. We're one of our 150 restaurants in 24 states. A lot of sacrifice. Doing all this for this noble turnaround story that I felt prepared for. I could have stayed in marketing and been a chief marketing officer, probably at Cheesecake Factory for as long as I wanted. But I liked this idea of stretching myself and trying to do something that I didn't know if I could do. But I felt like I was prepared because of the way I collaborate with all the other C-suite members. I knew I could form a team and do that and surround myself with smart people, which I did. I couldn't tell my team. So here I am. We're in the process of turning the brand around. We're in the process of testing this new concept called Mimi's Bakery, Cafe, and Bistro. And I'm, all discombobulated from a personal perspective because I'm, staying in a hotel even when I'm in town. And I had to work on the presentations. And you probably know a SIM, and you worked with a private equity firm to come up with the SIM that we would then send out to prospects. And then we would hold these meetings, sometimes 8 hours, with private equity firms, most of them just kicking tires, seeing what they can do. But we finally found a strategic play that we thought was going to be our rightful suitor. So I'd say the hardest thing for me was when I finally was able to tell my team, because at that time I had to bring them in the sale meetings because they all had to say, here's what I do and here's what, my intellectual capital I bring to the party, whether I'm in HR or operations or finance or whatnot. That was the toughest thing because they all looked at me like, what about our career? What about my job? And I said, look, here's what I'm doing. I'm going to negotiate something for every one of you. So they'll get a stay on, they'll get something as part of the sale if it goes through. And I want to make sure I took care of my team because if they bailed on me in that moment, I don't know what would have happened. But we stuck together, we saw it through, and the deal closed on a Friday. And on Monday morning at 8 o'clock, I'm supposed to meet with the new CEO of the bigger, broader enterprise to chart our future together. At 8:05, I'm out the door. We've decided to move in a different direction.
I want to interrupt you just for a second.
Yeah.
That is very typical. I mean, they tell you one thing, they get you like confiding and confident that, hey, we're going to take care of you. And then they kick you to the curb. NFL does that to their players all the time. It's like, hey, man, you just take one for the team and, you're going to be one of ours. And then, you know what? As soon as they can, they replace you with somebody younger, cheaper, and healthier. So here's my question. Any person in your situation would have taken an identity hit. Start asking questions like, what just happened? What could I have done differently? What should I have done that I didn't do? What did I do that I shouldn't have done? And like, what does this mean now for my career? Where do I go from here? Did you go through any of those kind of thoughts?
Yes, a lot. I knew I did the best I could with the clay I was given to mold. People ask me, well, what's the proudest moment or memory from your career? And I've had many that have worked out really well and some that didn't work out so well. But just that whole take this damaged piece of furniture and bring it back to life better than was when it was manufactured and lead the team in doing so. So I felt good about that, but it's natural to have the self-doubts. And what I call FUD in my book, fear, uncertainty, doubt, and delay. Fear of what if I'm not good enough? Uncertainty of what's next. Doubt of those background voices that like wet cement begin to harden in the back of your head that, well, maybe I'm not cut out for this. That leads to delay. And so I took a year off and thank God I had negotiated a year of severances from my original package. And I did two things, Craig. I went to work literally pro bono and then actually on staff as executive pastor of communications for my church. And I had this idea that I had gotten the morning after that whole thing took place. This was February 21st, I want to say 2013, so just now over 10 years ago. And in Southern California, that's about the sign signs of spring start to emerge. And we had a fig tree in our backyard. And I took the dog out the next morning after a fitful night of sleep, mulling over those things we're now talking about. And Craig, as God is my witness, as the sun was coming up over this wall in our backyard, it shone on that fig tree that was barren from the 6 or 7 weeks of winter we do get. And there on the end of one branch was this tiny little green sprig of a leaf just starting to. And I got this epiphany that a leaf is a symbol of growth and rebirth. I took the dog inside, went in my office, and I started banging out a treatment around this idea. And then I got to thinking, it's more than that. It's an acronym. I had been taught the rule of threes as a leader. Focus on 3 things. Get your team on, just maniacally focus on 3 things. You'll be more productive and more ultimately successful. My 3 things during that whole turnaround was leadership, engagement, and accountability. And those are really important. We need leadership up and down the ranks. We need everyone to be engaged with their heart, head, hands, and habits. And we need everybody accountable. Not only are we a publicly traded company in a division of one, but we got to be accountable to our team members in our restaurants and obviously to our guests. That was my mantra. Everybody knew it. I used it in weekly emails. Craig's doing a great job of leadership. Look at the result he's getting. He's holding his team accountable. He's engaging on a deeper level. And look, the one thing I realized in that morning after Epiphany was I was missing a letter, F, for fulfillment. So I then had this idea that LEAF is not only a symbol of growth and rebirth, it's an acronym for leadership, engagement, accountability, and fulfillment, which are 4 intertwined processes. You think about a 4-circle Venn diagram, in the middle of it is purposeful growth. So that fig tree's purpose is to be a fig tree. It's all it knows how to do, right? And so I got to thinking about this notion that leadership represents the seed and root system, which you have to have in an organization, just like a tree or a plant. And that leads to alignment. Engagement is that engagement of one's head, hands, and habits and heart that leads to empowerment. So now you have the seeds and the roots that needs the trunk and branches, otherwise it's just a stump, and a system of nourishment, which is called savia. In Spanish to English, it translates as lifeblood. What's the lifeblood of any organization? It's people, right? But engaged people that become empowered now have vested stake in the outcome. And that leads to accountability, which is the leaf or the fruit. That fig tree is designed to create fig leaves where all growth happens, as we learned in science in high school. through the magic of photosynthesis, but it's there also to not only help the plant grow, but bear fig fruit, which is not only sustenance for people and animals, but it has seeds inside that can be scattered for future growth. That leads to fulfillment, which is the ecosystem, the soil, the sun, the rain, that nurturing environment that allows that fig tree to be in the best situation to grow to its full potential, much like the culture, or what I call a community in an organization. So what I did was I was able to turn all of that mental baggage into something positive. And it never would have happened had I not had that dark, dark moment before. And so the lesson is that you can take your worst moments and you can find a way to twist it into something beautiful and positive.
And to that, I think everybody that has climbed to the top of the mountain has visited the desert. They've had the dark moments. In those dark moments is where ideas and motivation and energy and collaboration, something hopefully beautiful down the road. Call it success, people call it different things, but it's like, the idea that life is linear. I mean, would you agree that your career was just perfect and every place you went, you made more money, had more responsibility, had less headaches, less stress, less conflict? It was just a linear experience.
No way. It had twists and turns like a roller coaster. And I look at it like a roller coaster. And I used to say that's kind of what marketing is about. But now I look at my career and go, yeah, there was the anticipation of standing in line. There was the fear of finally in the car, now we're going and getting to the top of the first hill because you know what's going to come after that. And then there was all the twists and turns and flips and whatnot. But then when you get back into the station, which is kind of where I am in life right now, I'm like, I'm not sure I want to get on that same ride, but I like the fact that it was a journey that wasn't just, bubble gum and roses, that I had to learn tough lessons about myself. I had to receive some pretty difficult feedback to learn and grow. It wasn't always, annual performance reviews. I had a few stinkers and I had to really challenge myself. And so for me, as a leader, I believe in servant leadership as the highest form of leadership. But I got to thinking about what's one aspect of being a servant is humility. And humility is knowing that you don't know everything and that you can always learn and that you do have those 24 hours in a given day and tomorrow's a new day. And, you learn from the past, but you don't live there.
Love that. Love that. I don't know how much you know about Pro Mindset, but Pro Mindset is about your story and rewriting your story. Your story is initially you're a young man that grew up in Wichita, Kansas, that loved sports, that attended the University of Kansas and went out for the football team, joined a fraternity, and then got out in the real world after college. You probably used a lot of sports metaphors and principles and disciplines that you learned in sports to drive your career in corporate America. And then people identify you as this, certain way because, hey, you're the kid, from your neighborhood that left. You went on to do big things, but they don't know all the failures you had because Tom Brady's had a lot of failures too. Everybody that's successful has had a tremendous amount of failures, just not all of them are public. But when you're in a C-suite situation, you're the president of a company, those failures are public. But you have your peers from Leo Burnett and Cheesecake Factory and other places you may have been, and you're like, how did you respond in your conversations with your peers the months and weeks following the departure from Mimi's? Because you had this like black cloud hanging over your head. Like, what happened? When you're talking to a friend or a colleague, former colleague, they're like, Mark, I saw what went down. What happened?
Yeah.
How did you allow that or not allow that to impact your identity and who you were?
I don't think, to be honest, it affected my identity at the time. I think given, kind of my faith background, I know that the worst thing is never the last thing, but it had to have affected me as I think back. But here's what I will tell you. Now that I have left kind of my W-2 C-suite corporate America and I'm an author, speaker, and consultant, you kind of find out who your friends really are. And there's a guy named Chip Conley who created the Modern Elder Academy, and he has this great line, and he called himself a pit. Now, in my working days, you don't want a pit. That's a performance improvement plan. Thank God I never had one of those. But he called himself a previously important person. And I resonated with that because I don't think at the time I realized how much identity and self-worth I ascribed to my job. I loved what I did, and it was cool to hand out a business card with president or chief marketing officer or EVP this or whatever, right? But I think I let it become too much my identity so that when I finally left, it was like falling off a cliff. I went from, in my stupid mind, thinking I've gone from somebody to nobody, instead of God's given me a different purpose at this stage in this season of my life to go do something that he wants me to do, that he prepared for me in advance to do. And it's my opportunity to reinvent myself and tell a new story that it's taken me a few years to be comfortable to do that, to be honest. And so being able to be a guest on your podcast and tell this story, hopefully it resonates with other people, other listeners, so that they can maybe avoid that idea of putting too much of your identity into what you do versus who you are.
I see it all the time in sports.
Yeah.
There's a 5-year transition for most NFL athletes after they're finished. Whether they play for 5 minutes or whether they play for 10 years, they still go through about a minimum 2 years, but 3 to 4 to 5 year transition period, because what they did being an athlete is who they were.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is when they had thoughts that, hey, I'm a football player, I'm a professional athlete. No, I'm a man, I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I'm all these roles. In the world is talking about their football. Media, the social media, newspapers, where their coaches, front office, their families. When they do get home for a holiday, everybody's asking them about what's going on with the team. So even the people that have the strongest human beingness,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to the human doingness, they were conditioned by their environment and by their circle of people. No, you are what you do. And so I can identify with that, because for many years with friends and family, it'd be like, who'd you have drafted? They were being nice as can be. What if I didn't have a good year?
Yeah.
Okay, what if I had a guy that was supposed to go in the second round, win the fifth round? They're like, what happened to him? Like, it became my identity.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a dangerous place to be.
Well, it led me, though, Craig, to, again, a learning opportunity. So in my book, I use that 4-circle Venn diagram as a model for a lot of different things, not because it's one size fits all, but I kind of think it fits a lot of different things. There are 4 seasons, not 3. So I no longer believe in the rule of 3s. I believe in the higher power of 4s. There are 4 directions, not 3. There are 4 chambers to the human heart, not 3. There are 4 elements to an atom, the source of light, not 3. I could go on and on with this foreplay. You get the idea.
A few more.
Right?
Give me a few more. Just I'd never thought about that before.
Oh, 4 gospels, 4 plagues or humors. 4 Greek. There's air, wind. I'm trying to think of the 4 forms, like liquid. Yeah. And literally in the book, I had like a page and a half of this. So I'll send you a copy. You can read it. But it got me thinking about, I'm going to weave something together here. So stay with me. You're familiar with Simon Sinek, the whole start with why movement. People want to know why you do what you do before they care how you do it or even what you do. Well, I believe in that to a point, but I actually got the notion is you should start with who, and specifically who you serve. And I believe there are 4 realms of service, again, like that 4-circle Venn diagram, that make us whole people, right? There's personal, ourselves. Got to take care of ourselves, mind, body, spirit, and soul, or we're no good to anybody else. There's relational, those we love or care about. There's professional, and is what we do. And then there's spiritual. And so for me, I don't go to church on Sunday and say, all right, God, I'll see you next Sunday. I got to go to work on Monday. It's part of who I am. And same thing with my profession. It's part of who I am, but it's not the whole gestalt. It's about who you serve that leads you off into your why, which is your purpose or motivations, that leads you then to your how you're uniquely gifted. And then your what is, okay, now what are you going to do with all that clay? What are you going to mold with that for your life and in service to others? And so I think that whole idea of, I wish I would have written this line, but Bob Buford wrote a book called Halftime years ago. And the subtitle was Moving from Success to Significance. And I just thought that was brilliant. And that was all part of what happened with the friend that you were talking about. As I was licking my wounds after the whole Mimi's thing, he said, hey, Mark, there's this book you probably should read. And I even mentioned him in the book because it was something that got me going. Like, I've reached the pinnacle. Could I go get another president or CEO job? Probably. But what do I really love to do? And I got to thinking that red thread that was woven really throughout my life was this whole idea of service and hospitality. One reason I gravitated toward the restaurant industry or the entertainment business, I was head of marketing and sales at Universal Studios Hollywood. And I just thought, I want to be in service. And that's what lights me up. I love to lead, but I love to lead in service of the team and what we want to accomplish together. And that's what lights me up. So then I got to thinking, well, how can I do that? And that's where this whole idea became a book that then became speaking, that became consulting. And at some point, I'll finish this e-learning platform that will help teach people how to find their purpose in life and work. And I just feel like that's what I'm now called to do. And so my vision of who I used to be has changed. And I'm a previously important person, but I'm still very important to those that matter.
You've mentioned your faith several times.
Yes.
How does your book weave in the Lord? How do you connect your message in the Purposeful Growth Revolution? Where's God maybe invisible in there, but Jesus is in there?
Yeah. And they are. Now, I won't say it's a religious book, but I'm also going to say I'm not going to shy away from who I am as a whole person and share bits of my faith. So there's a whole chapter on purpose, individual, team, organization, and world. Under individual, I cite The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren, and what he says are your 5 key purposes, right? And that's in my book. And it was one of the best-selling books and probably one of the things that turned me from being a somewhat traditional Christian, Sundays and holidays, to understanding that I'm, first line of the book says, it's not about you. It's about God, and you're here for him and his purpose for your life. And so that woke me up, that got me thinking externally instead of internally. There's a section in there where I talk about getting the most out of your talents, and I weave the parable of the talents in there. There's a part about the parable of the sower, and I weave that in terms of now acting on your faith. And the whole idea of servant leadership, I say, well, I really want to be a great leader. Who should I look at? And I look at Jesus Christ, who led with humility. He's God, but he came to earth and he served. And he said, I didn't come here to be served, but to serve, to give my life as a ransom for many. He knew what his purpose was, and he fulfilled it. He could have called down angels and armies and did all sorts of things if he wanted to, but you found him around the least of these, the lepers, the prostitutes, the tax collectors, the quote-unquote sinners, and not the religious elite of the day. As a matter of fact, he had great disdain for them. And so the idea of servant leadership is that image of Jesus Christ in my mind as the role model for all of us in whatever form of leadership.
For those listeners out there that don't know about the parable about talents, why don't you give that? Why don't you just...
Yeah. ironically, it was a story that I would tell my now 26-and-a-half-year-old twin daughters, but when they were old enough to stand up in their crib, I would just tell them, be the best McKenna, be the best Brianna you can be. And I would tell them about the talents. Like, we're not all given the same amount. Talents back in the day were like coins. They were something of value, right? And so a wealthy individual was going to be going away for a length of time, and he had 3 servants, and he wanted to entrust them his wealth so that when he came back, he would have something of value to show for it. He gave one of the servants 1 talent, one of them 3, and one of them 5. Well, the one who was given 3 went out and multiplied them, and now had 6. The one who had 5 went out and multiplied them. Now they had 10. The one who had 1 was so fearful of losing the 1 and disappointing his master, dug up, put it under a tree. And so that when the master came home, he went and dug it up and said, here's your talent back. And the master said to the other 2, well done, thy good and faithful servant, come enter into the joy of your master. Because you were given little, now you're going to be over a lot. And to the one servant who just had the 1 talent, he said, leave my sight, you wicked sloth. You didn't put it in a bank to draw interest. So it didn't end well for that particular person. So the whole idea is to inspire people to take whatever they were given. Like, you're certainly physically bigger than me as a football player, so I can't do what you do. But I'm pretty good in different ways. And so all I can do is be the best Mark Mears I can be. And that's what I always tried to do. I was a swimmer, I was in track and field, and I was in football. But my whole thing was whenever I left the practice field or a game, I wanted to make sure I left it all out there on the field. Nothing left. And I think that's what we're all called to do. That's not to say we shouldn't have restful times on weekends or vacations, even though I didn't take as many as I should have. And you can boomerang by being too much like that. But it's all about, at the end of the day, I just want to say, I like a sponge. I squeezed it all out. I got the very most out of the God-given talents and abilities and experiences that he gave me. But it's to do his work, not mine.
Amen, brother. Okay, let's go. Let's jump into your book then. Give the audience an overview of what the Purposeful Growth Revolution is about.
Yeah, I kind of alluded to it earlier, and I'd started with that 4-leaf growth model: leadership, engagement, accountability, and fulfillment. And I got to thinking I could just write it about that, and I started to. Then I got to thinking, there's a bigger, broader story here. And so I got to thinking about this idea of going from a leader to a legacy builder. What does that mean? Well, we all want to be a better leader, right? There's, I think 14 billion hits if you Google the word leader and leadership. And there's seminars, webinars, blogs, podcasts, books, newsletters, etc., to help teach people how to be better leaders. And that's great. But no one's really talking about how to be a legacy builder. And I don't mean the kind of legacy where you bequeath something of value after one is, dead and gone, but it's that living legacy. That what do we do every single day that can make a difference in the lives of others, right? Think about, throwing a pebble in a pond. Well, you don't see the pebble after it's broken the water, but you do see the ripple effect, the impact it makes, right? So I got to thinking, well, I need to tell a bigger, broader story than just that leaf growth model. So I got to thinking, if I really want to stand for purposeful growth, what are kind of the 4 different kind of seasons, if you will? So the book is kind of tied into the nature theme, as I mentioned, but there's, on the front end, there's cultivating your field for purposeful growth. Now, I live in Kansas, grew up in Kansas, so did you. We don't just rush out and plant seeds. We got to cultivate the field first to get it ready for growth. So the first part of the book is all about getting you ready for what does purpose mean? What does growth mean? How you tie it together as purposeful growth. And then the second segment of the book is about yourself, right? So it's now preparing yourself for purposeful self. And it's all about you. It's like, there's 4 dimensions of you. There's who you think you are. There's who you actually are. there's who others see you as being, and there's who you ideally want to be. And that's a big part of that whole section and building your personal brand. And so we've gotten you ready for growth. We've worked on you, and now we can take it to the work. So it's growing you forward for purposeful work. And that's what that LEAF growth model is: leadership, engagement, accountability, and fulfillment. That then takes you to the final season, if you will, and that is kind of scattering your seeds for purposeful life. How do you pay it backward along your growth journey to help others along theirs? So it's 4 sections of the book, but all tied together around this whole notion of the importance of purposeful growth in not only your life, but your work.
Love it. So you have twin daughters that are in their mid-20s. I heard you say McKenna and Brianna. Okay. So which characteristic is most prevalent in their life that is your legacy to them?
Well, they will remind me that I would always tell them to be the best McKenna, be the best Brianna you can be. Whenever something went wrong and I would talk to them, they would say, remember, Dad, you always say. And so I think that whole idea of just doing your very best, your level best every single day, whatever it is you're doing, whether it's school, whether it's now work, whether it's being a wife or mother or whatever, just be the best you can be. And God doesn't ask any more of us than that. And your mom and your dad don't either. And we just want you to know you're loved. And every day, there wasn't a day that went by where I didn't tell them I loved them. And so I think that legacy of love and support is what I would hope they would say if you were asking them that question.
Well, the real question is, did they go to K-State or KU or somewhere else?
Well, one daughter, Brianna, went to KU and kind of followed in my footsteps, although she did even better and was going to be, she was the Dean's Award winner in the School of Journalism, was going to be the one that would carry the banner down the hill in graduation. But both of them graduated in 2020, which was COVID, and that whole graduation ceremony was called off. My other daughter, Kenna, went to the Evergreen State College, and her gift is languages. She loves languages, and so she majored in Japanese and linguistics. And so both of them whip smart, both of them smarter than me and more talented, but both of them have great hearts. And I think that's what I'm most proud of. And I give their mom, Stacy, a lot of credit for that. She was the one most of the time when I was out slaying dragons in corporate America. She was the one that was constant. And we said, after I met her, she was a flight attendant, and then we found out we're having twins. And so we said, okay, we'll try this for a while because there's no way you can do both. And so she decided to dedicate herself to her family and myself. And I did as much as I possibly could. That I felt like my duty now is to be the breadwinner, the hunter-gatherer, if you will, and really take care of the family in that way. But I was always there for all their sporting events. I was always there for first days of school and all that kind of stuff. And I really made it a priority, more so than I had when I was growing up.
Okay. So you said off air that you have another book you're working on. Give us the rundown real quick on that.
Yeah, real quick. It's kind of a sequel. So if you think about the Purposeful Growth Revolution, it is designed to get people to think differently about their personal and professional life and help leaders become legacy builders. Well, then I got to thinking, what else can you do more specifically? And I got this epiphany. I write a LinkedIn newsletter, and the book was published in the fall. And then that February, I'm like, what should I write to be more relevant? And I thought, well, February is Valentine's Day, the season of love. And there I got this thought, well, what if I wrote about love? And I came up with this model or acronym, which stands for listen, observe, value, and empower. So I got to thinking, those are 4 interwoven characteristics of not only a great leader, someone you want to follow, but a legacy builder, someone you want to emulate when it's your turn to lead. Someone who can listen on a deeper level and ask good questions, and not only listen to what's being said, but maybe what's not being said. So many of us have personal issues, whether it's caring for an elderly parent, maybe there's relationship issues at home, possibly you have a sick kid who needs surgery. We have to be naive to think that doesn't impact somebody's performance at work. So building empathy and trust is the foundation of any good relationship, right? So not only listen, but observe. And I happen to live here in Kansas City, home of the Kansas City Chiefs, world champions, by the way. Andy Reid doesn't wait to the end of the season to coach. He's coaching every day in real time, in the film room, in the training room, in the team rooms, on the field, before games, during games, halftime, after games, right? And so observing someone and coaching, encouraging them, sometimes critiquing them in real time makes them then feel valued. And again, value that whole person, not just a worker who's here to do a job, but that whole person who has 4 realms of service just like you: personal, relational, professional, and spiritual. And help invest in them to grow. And then finally empower them. I don't know about you, Craig, but when I learned to ride a bike, I think I started on a trike because it was a few years before the big wheel was around. But I remember getting this cool royal blue Schwinn bike with the banana seat, big old handlebars, but I had to put training wheels on it because I wasn't ready to ride it yet. And I would tear around the driveway in the neighborhood because I'm on training wheels, and so I can't fall over. Well, I remember the Saturday morning, my dad came and said, "Hey, son, it's time to take the training wheels off." And he took me out front, showed me what to do, how to balance, but then he held the bike in the bar and walked down the sidewalk with me until I kind of got the hang of it, and then let go. And then I fell down a few times, and he coached and encouraged me. Here's what you did well. Here's what you need to do different next time. Make sure you know where the brake is. Make sure you know, you got to keep pedaling or you'll fall over. And then I did it. And I remember that sense of freedom to this day. It's in my mind's eye of riding down that sidewalk, turning around, being able to start and stop on my own and riding back to him. And I don't know who had the bigger grin, my dad or me, but that sense of freedom that I felt because I was empowered to do something on my own. Imagine now taking that into the workplace. You wouldn't have lack of engagement, which is at historic lows, or what the kids are calling quiet quitting these days, which has been exacerbated based on the COVID-led, remote and hybrid working environments. We're not in the office as much as we used to be. And some are working remote 100%. And some come in every now and then. Who knows where it's going to end up, but I don't think we can put the genie back in the bottle. So how do you engage people as a leader? You love them by listening, observing, valuing, and empowering them to be their very, very best. If you do that, they're going to give you more discretionary effort. They're going to have a stake of ownership in the outcome. They're going to be more productive, higher quality work, and more loyal. And that's what we all want as employers, right? So I want to put the human back in human resources. And I say to do that, all we need is love.
There's a lot of alignment between what you talk about and Pro Mindset. A lot of alignment. Hey, Mark, I want to thank you for joining us today. And I want to thank the audience for listening to this podcast. And hopefully it's resonates with you, your career, your family situation, your identity. And you found some of the comments that Mark made, which are very profound, meaningful.
Thanks, Craig. I appreciate you having me on. And it's great to catch up with you. And please tell Teddy I said hello.
I will. Hang on for a second here. Where can people find you?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, my website is markamears.com. Don't forget the A because I couldn't get markmears.com. And there you'll find self-assessment at the top that you can take. It's just about 5-6 minutes in length to find out kind of where you are, kind of a benchmark on where you are in this whole concept of purpose in life and work. And then you'll immediately get to download your scores and a special color PDF report with some helpful tips from yours truly. And also find out how to connect with me on LinkedIn. And there I have a newsletter that you can subscribe to. It comes out every month. So if you like this conversation and some of the concepts where I go a little bit deeper, there's a good opportunity for you to subscribe and connect with me there. So I'd like to meet you and learn from you. So don't just follow me. Let's connect and get to know each other.
Before we end, I want to plug my new book called Pro Mindset. And people can find that on craigdoman.com or anywhere else you can find a book. I want to thank everybody for joining Pro Mindset. Go out and have a great day. And we'll catch up with you the next time.
Thanks, Craig.
It's Craig Doman, the host of Pro Mindset Podcast. I want to thank you for listening or watching today's show. And you can catch us every week on the normal social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the listening podcast platforms. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And more importantly, I hope you gained a pro mindset insight. Please be sure to rate and review Pro Mindset Podcast. And I look forward to catching up with you on our next show.